That's where we start today's deep dive. Phil Perry joining us here on the desk, fresh off of a trip to Green Bay. And Phil, you heard Aaron Rodgers right there saying that the Packers, they had to win this game against a third-string quarterback in Bailey Zappe. But how might that performance from Bailey Zappe on Sunday maybe slow down some of his critics?
I don't know if it will, in all honesty. I think he was fine, and I think the poise that he showed, I think the preparedness that he showed, those are impressive qualities. No question about it. I think in terms of what he is physically, he sort of is what he is. And having spoken to plenty of people before the draft who watched him and watched him closely, they said this is a guy who's really smart, he's tough, he understands his offense in college, his arm is borderline NFL caliber. And that's what he is. And I think he's a backup for a long time, and he'll probably have a job for a long time. I don't think we're looking at this performance, though, and saying, hey, this guy could be a 15-year starter. This guy's the next Tom Brady. We're doing a little bit of a disservice to the guy. I know it's tongue-in-cheek. A little bit of a disservice to the guy comparing him to Tom Brady's first start. That's all I'll say.
Insanity, actually, when you think of Tom Brady having spent 4 years at Michigan and Bailey Zappe coming from Western Kentucky. I mean, Brady spent 4 years playing for the Michigan Wolverines, winning bowl games, winning them in dramatic fashion, then apprenticing a year under Drew Bledsoe and taking over a team that was built around some of his skills. Bailey Zappe was newspaper stuffed into a leak that held up over the course of the day. And that is not discrediting his 99-yard performance. But that's about as good as it could have been. God bless him. He did all those things that Phil referred to, Paul, in poised and preparedness and not peeing down his leg and getting the car out of the driveway, around the cul-de-sac, and back into the driveway without crashing it. But let's not get crazy and take him on the highway.
Yeah, I give him high marks for just being ready. And, you know, I made the comment in the first segment about this guy's never even dressed before.
Right.
And now all of a sudden, 2 series into the game in Lambeau Field, he finds himself thrust into the middle of the action. Again, I thought he did handle himself well. I thought there were some predictable rookie moments where he's kind of running around. I thought he got out of some clean pockets and got himself into some trouble. And I thought, let's give the coaches a lot of credit here, too.
Amen.
You know, whether it's Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, or Bill Belichick, or all three of them more likely, they kept him out of harm's way. They protected him. And I know there's been a lot of caterwauling about, you know, what they should have done in overtime on 4th down, 4th and 5. You really think 4th and 5 and overtime is a great time to roll the dice with the way that they handled the rest of the,
and the funny
three
thing
quarters?
Was, on that 3rd and 5, they actually had crafted up a pretty good play that got Hunter Henry open, and Bailey Zappe kind of panicked and scurried out of there like a chipmunk and missed the window to hit Hunter Henry. That was the window in which the Patriots could have conceivably won the game. He played absolutely fine, but the notion that there should be a quarterback controversy in 2022 is beyond the pale. And that's not to say that he can't be Cooper Rush at some point, Amina, in the distant future. It ain't going to happen this year, though.
Yeah. Phil, was there anything that you saw from Bailey Zappe's performance on Sunday that maybe changed the way you saw him now versus in the preseason or during training camp?
Well, it's so hard to tell how anybody's going to deal with any type of pressure situation in training camp or in the preseason. But what we saw from Zappe, and it was extremely impressive to have guys like Matthew Slater, Devin McCourty, and Matt Judon, guys that have seen a lot of football and a lot of winning football, for them to praise him the way that they did, for him to be as ready as he was, probably without seeing a whole lot in the way of practice snaps, let's be honest. They had to get Brian Hoyer ready. Bailey Zappe's probably working with the scout team. He's probably, imitating Aaron Rodgers for the first-team defense. He's probably not working a whole lot with Devontae Parker throughout the week. So for him to show up the way he did, I learned that he has some poise, he has some mental toughness. As far as the physical skill set goes, that's going to need some time to develop.
And that's what Bailey Zappe looked like on Sunday, just a game manager. Like, he stepped in, just like you said, the newspaper analogy. That's exactly what he did. He stopped the leak on Sunday. I think surprising a lot of people as well. All right, while Zappe was nearly knocking off the pack, Mac Jones was back in New England resting up his ankle. During his appearance on WEEI's Merloni and Fourier and Mego this afternoon, Zappe revealed that he and Mac Jones spoke earlier today. All right, you talk about the competition and really the lack thereof between Mac Jones and Bailey Zappe, and you touched on it a little bit, Curran, but why should people kind of let that idea go, just knowing that Bailey Zappe isn't ready yet quite to be out there on the field full time?
I think if you just observe in a vacuum what Mac Jones did against the Baltimore Ravens, when at junctures he was having his best NFL game as a thrower compared to what Bailey Zappe was able to do yesterday. And two, if you look at how Mac Jones looked in beating back the performance of a former MVP last year as a rookie in training camp coming out of Alabama, it's just a massive gap between where they were last year, and it's only larger now. And again, not to discredit what the kid did, it's tough to tamp down people's expectations because he did have what should be a well-celebrated day today, but we want to keep it reasonable.
Yeah, and it's almost like you feel disrespectful because you're raining on the parade, and no one's trying to do that. We're just trying to...
But we're having fun, though.
Well, we're trying to paint the picture as it was, and again, they really held his hand. You know, they dragged him through the game. And again, I give the coaches a lot of credit for that because they didn't allow him to get the train off the tracks.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting, and it's so early in the week. We don't know yet which quarterback is going to be available, but how they would develop a more varied plan with Bailey Zappe if he does have to play again, because it felt like, especially when it came to the passing game, it was just very limited, right? So there's only so much you can do with a guy who's barely practiced. The run game was tremendous, and they're going to have to, I think, flex their muscles as far as that part of their offense is concerned for the foreseeable future. Even when Mac Jones comes back, those are the types of things they should be doing. Run the ball, downhill, use play action, help Mac Jones. He's at a different level in terms of his skill set right now than Bailey Zappe is, but he could use the help too occasionally. So I hope games like this, if there are more with Bailey Zappe, Amina, they open up the eyes of the people putting the plans together and saying, you know, if we just did some of this stuff with a quarterback who's actually at a higher level, our offense could take itself to another level.
Yeah, I think that a lot of fans watched that game on Sunday and they said, okay, this offense looks a bit better with Bailey Zappe than it does with Mac Jones. But Paul, just how different does the offense look with a Mac Jones versus a Bailey Zappe, which I feel like was just a more simplified version of the offense?
Oh, and that's the key to me. It was so simplified. And I go back to what Tom said earlier about Mac Jones against Baltimore. That was an offense we really haven't seen in the 4 games. There were large stretches of that game against the Ravens where they were chucking it all over the place down the field. I think Devontae Parker had 5 catches in that game, all of 20 or more yards. You didn't see really a whole lot of that with Bailey Zappe. In the 2 plays that he was able to make, you could see just how much they schemed up after, as Phil said, pounding the ball with Damian Harris or Ramondre Stevenson. Run. We're going to hit you with a hard play action. We're going to float a guy open and 2 floaters down, one of which came, by the way, well after the play clock had expired. And I don't know how much that had to do, if anything, with Green Bay's defense. But 2 really easy throws for 20-yarders as opposed to what Mac Jones was doing against Baltimore. I'm with these guys. That was night and day.
And, Tom, I know it was a toss-up. You know, well, it is going to be a toss-up with who's going to be out there on Sunday.
Sure.
But who do you see being under center come Sunday when the Patriots do play the Lions?
If all things were equal and Bailey Zappe and Brian Hoyer, and Hoyer was cleared to play, which we know that might be a bridge too far given the concussion protocols and the way they're being examined this week. But I would still say it's Brian Hoyer. He was 5 for 6 for, I believe, 37 yards and 16 snaps, and Bailey Zappe threw for 99 over the course of probably 55 snaps. They threw for 126 yards as a team, and Brian Hoyer generated a bunch of them. I'm not saying Brian Hoyer is your answer, especially inside the 20s, where he seems to have some difficulty. But to me, it would certainly be Brian Hoyer if both guys were all full go.
No question. To me, you've got a stronger arm in Brian Hoyer. You have the ability to run a more varied offense with Brian Hoyer. Those 2 things in and of themselves add to that even though Bailey Zappe showed some poise, Paul, Brian Hoyer should have him as far as those sort of intangible qualities are concerned.
You
too.
really ruined the whole thing. Tom and I had a good argument going. You came in and settled things down. I'm with you guys.
The calming force.
It has to be Brian. It has to be Brian Hoyer. Go away.
We are one.
I got Phil just bring everybody together.
Curran, he's so cool. He's
Oh my gosh.
He classes up
All
the
right. We've
senator.
been grading
But it's got to
Zappe's
be Brian
performance
Hoyer if he's
versus the
healthy.
fact. But what about Bill Belichick's one person who isn't buying in, Tony Maserati? Take a listen to what he had to say earlier today on Felger Maz.
This praise that is being heaped on Belichick in particular is ridiculous. Like, masterful game plan. What was so masterful about it? We talked about it last week. Play man and run the ball. Like, play man and run the ball. What is so effing masterful about that?
I get it. It wasn't a complex offense out there. I mean, you saw Bailey Zappe again just managing the game and handing the ball off to the running backs. However, Curran, is Bill Belichick not getting enough credit for how he helped them be competitive in this matchup against the Green Bay Packers, who are contenders for a Super Bowl title?
I mean, somebody on the defensive side of the ball helped hold Aaron Rodgers to 4 for 11 for like 15 feet in the first half. I mean, I'm sure that Bill Belichick might have had something to do with that. I mean, it's short-sighted. It's short-sighted, Mike. It is. I think it's, and to think that Bailey Zappe, when he came on, I said, 41-3 is in the cards, ladies and gentlemen. And the fact that they went to overtime, I mean, I'm guessing the sideline had some impact, guys.
It had to have. And I think maybe the biggest impact, as far as I'm concerned, is all the work that was done leading up to week 4, meaning all the work you did to get Jack Jones ready, to get Bailey Zappe ready to be able to step in and be able to hold his own to a degree. So these are things, Paul, even just drafting some of these guys, and Lord knows their draft was panned in a variety of different locales, here included, but having guys that have the confidence of a Jack Jones or a Marcus Jones to come in and make game-changing plays in different facets of the game when you need those because of where your offense is, coaching staff deserves some credit for that.
And I think it's a great point to bring up the preparation as opposed to the game plan, because I think Tony's right in a lot of ways. We all thought they would run the ball heavy with Brian Hoyer or no Brian Hoyer, right? I mean, the game plan has been very similar in all these games. They want to establish the run, but Marcus Jones inserted at punt returner. Great day. He gave him a big lift in returns, both on kicks and punts. He came really close to setting him up for the game winner in overtime. We've been calling for that. Get these guys more involved.
Here's the thing with the run game, too. We sat there on that hill sweltering, watching them run like they were running into a friggin' brick wall over and over and over again because they had a system that wasn't working. Somebody was responsible. Maybe he was responsible for trying it in the first place and not having it work, but having it pivoted. And I don't know if it's Matt Patricia, Brian Hoyer, Bailey Zappe, Mac Jones, Joe Judge. Somebody said, let's stop doing this.
Well, what's interesting is they pivoted back a little bit, too. I think there is some flexibility as far as
then on 2nd and 5 in overtime, we go back to it.
They score the touchdown with Damian Harris on a wide zone run. That's that, newer style thing that they've been working on all summer. But then Paul's right. They go to it in crunch time in a critical moment, which they did in Pittsburgh. To their credit, it helped them win that game. This time it gets stopped for 0 yards. It basically stops the offense in its tracks. So they have adjusted, though, Tom, to your point, over the last few weeks to be able to lean into what they do well, and they do deserve credit for that.
I feel like the conversation surrounding Matt Patricia as a play caller has quieted down a little bit as we've gotten a little bit deeper into the season. But, Curran, how much is your confidence growing in Matt Patricia after what you've seen through the first 4 games?
A lot, but it's, again, coming from way down on the floor to about waist height because he started that far, and it wasn't his fault to be put into that position, nor was it Cole Strange's fault to be the first round pick by the Patriots. He's played great, but we could still have that debate. But there are guys on this team who were put in positions by Bill Belichick that garnered criticism just based on what they were given, who have shown up pretty well. And Matt Patricia, I think, Phil, has been incredible. I know Phil hates these.
That's a strong word. That's very strong. But as the play caller, give him credit for that. But he's also the offensive line coach, right, Paul? So the success that they're having in the run game now, he deserves a nod for that as well.
Yeah, and getting Marcus Cannon involved on Sunday I thought was a good wrinkle. I have to think Patricia had something to do with that. I think you might see a little bit more of a permanent change to Marcus Cannon from Isaiah Wynn, but maybe for the next block.